Hi everybody, I'm Pedro and I'm here to talk to you about the controversy surrounding the Selena series on Netflix. Just earlier this week, I made a video with my reactions to the series, but I've been noticing several comments on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook that are calling into question the authenticity of the series. I think it's a good idea for us to sort of talk about them, reflect about them, and I can give you my opinions as to what I'm hearing that has some validity and some stuff that really, honestly, it's just drama for drama's sake. So let's start out with the number one controversy that I keep hearing over and over and over again, that Christian Serratos, who's playing the role of Selena, doesn't look like Selena. And a lot of times what people are concentrating on is her figure. It is 100% true. Christian Serratos is not the same shape of Selena. They do have different body types. I think it's really important to point out that at the time, Selena wasn't really seen as this body icon. She looked very similar to other Latina artists of her time. She didn't have a particularly different body than what everybody else was seeing on television in Latin TV stations at the time. It really wasn't until she did her crossover into English that people started taking a look at her body a lot more and commenting on her hips and her butt, really. It was the release of the 1997 movie with Jennifer Lopez that really brought that intense attention to Selena's butt. So Selena's role modeling really wasn't about her trying to have a different body type and putting it out there. It really was just how she was made. But even if we look at Selena as she was, she had a tremendously small waist that wasn't realistic for a lot of women at the time. She did a lot of cardio exercise on stage every single night. That was a thing, that was her job. So it was more possible for her to keep that trim figure when you are having to dance the way that Selena danced every day on stage. What really captivated Latino audiences was really the way that she treated them, the way that she made them feel, and her talent. I feel that a lot of, after her crossover happened, there has been less and less talk about the incredible voice that Selena had and the incredible connection that she built with her audiences. She didn't go to the top of the Latin charts because she had a curvaceous body. She went to the top of the Latin charts because she was an amazing singer. Now let's also keep in mind that the series is covering from Selena's early teens to her death at the age of 23. So they had to find an actress that could realistically play a teenager, 14-year-old Selena, as well as 23-year-old Selena. Christian Serratos does in fact look a lot like teenage Selena. Selena at that age was lankier and not quite as curvaceous as her later years. And it was really important to have an actress that could play that. To me, I look at her in her teenage years and I look at her in her adult years, and she seems to fit that mold. If I were to look at Jennifer Lopez when she did the movie, I don't think she could have realistically played a teenage version of Selena. And I think it's important for us to point this out. Selena and Christian Serratos are as they were made. Christian Serratos has been a thinner person all along. She is a vegan and has talked about animal rights for a very long time. I think Selena would have appreciated that about her, and she would have wanted an actress that is also as she is, but is able to embody the essential qualities of what made Selena who she was, and I seriously doubt that that would include the shape of her body. Other things that I'm hearing online are how the wigs or the costumes don't look right. And this is coming a lot from, shall I say, younger Selena fans. The reason I think this is coming out is because a lot of younger Selena fans grew up with the movie Selena. They were used to watching it in class or at home or perhaps in TBS in the morning. And so they're very used to this version of Selena that was playing in their TVs. There was a lot more to Selena the person than Selena the movie played out. Essentially, the movie jumps from Selena being an 8 or 9-year-old girl to being a full-grown adult in bustiers. Selena had perms. Selena had bleached hair. Selena had dreadlocks at one point. Selena had short hair, longer hair, all kinds of curly hair. Selena was an everyday American teenager growing up in Texas. So she fluctuated with the trends and made style choices that today might not seem that appropriate, but really were appropriate at that time. You also have to remember that Selena made a lot of her clothes initially, so her clothes didn't quite look like something coming out of a runway. Selena was never afraid to experiment early on, and you see that represented in the trailer and in the hairstyles and all the different various costumes that have been shown. This is going to make a lot of fans who really just grew up with the movie feel very uncomfortable, because this was not the polished Selena that they got to see in the Jennifer Lopez 1997 movie. Speaking of the 1997 Jennifer Lopez movie, another thing that I hear a lot is, why do we need a series? Wasn't it enough to have the movie? It basically told her entire life. Or a modified version of it is that this is just copying the movie. And so why do we need the series overall? To reiterate my previous point, the Selena movie skipped most of her life. The movie jumped from the 70s to the 90s in the blink of an eye, completely leaving out Selena's teenage years. This is really important because this is when Selena and her family really struggled the most. This is where we're going to see them be on food stamps. This is when we're going to see the bus that was not so glamorous. This is where we're going to see them sleeping on the floor, town to town. This is where we're going to see bottles being thrown at them, people harassing Selena, on and on. This is where we see really what made Selena so special, and how even though there were so many adversities that she went through, she managed to be able to rise above them. This really takes her death and minimizes it by showing us that it wasn't important how she died. What was important was how she lived. And finally, one of the biggest controversies that we keep hearing over and over again is that Chris Perez wasn't involved in this production. I think this is a valid point. Chris Perez was her husband, and he has definitely a great deal to contribute to the Selena story. After reading his book, To Selena with Love, which I completely recommend that you buy or get on ebooks if you haven't yet, is that we get to see a different side of Selena that we hadn't seen yet in the movie, and that we really hadn't heard from either him or the interviews with the other family members. One of the things that really captivated me from Chris's book was how he talked about that although Selena smiled and laughed a lot, she also cried a lot, that her emotions weren't just one-sided. We see in the movie a very happy-go-lucky girl, and Chris says that was her. That definitely was her. But there was also the other side that felt a lot and cried a lot and worried, and she fought for what she wanted to be in life. So yes, I 100% agree with all of the fans that he should have been part of this. However, it's not that uncomplicated. In 2017, Suzette Quintanilla announced that they were working with Disney on a series. Now, this production with Disney was supposed to be an animated series of some sort. We weren't quite sure. We didn't get many details as fans. But Suzette, when you visited the museum, sometimes would show you some of the renderings that came in from Disney. This was before Chris had ever announced or talked about his book becoming a series. In early 2018, the Quintanillas announced that they had made a deal with ABC to produce a series that was loosely based around Selena and her music. It was supposed to be some sort of family drama, but that wasn't based on Selena's life, but that used Selena as an inspiration. Now, fast forward to later that year when Chris announces that he is working on a series based on his book, To Selena with Love, with a third-party company. We never really heard as to what happened with the ABC plan or what happened with the Disney story, but probably around this time, the Quintanillas started negotiating with Netflix. I don't know if the Quintanillas let Chris know about the series, but it is known that Chris did not let the Quintanillas know about his series either. So I don't know if this actually happened, but what I imagine is that both Chris and the Quintanillas were negotiating a television series at the same time without each other's knowledge. The Quintanillas are working at this point with Netflix, and Chris is working with a third-party production company, and they're both planning to have Selena's series made for TV. And let's not forget, Mr. Quintanilla was also Selena's representative, official representative, while she was here on earth. She trusted her father with those business decisions. She had continued to work with him and he continued to be her manager. So he was acting in the capacity of being a manager in negotiating these Netflix systems. Chris was Selena's husband and he was operating as Selena's husband, sharing his story with her into this book and production company. I believe what happened when they realized that they were both working on television series at the same time, the Quintanillas then sued Chris to stop his TV version. I don't think it was because they didn't want Chris's story to be out there, because the book was already out there and they didn't sue them for that. I think it really was because the Quintanillas were working on this deal with Netflix. The problem really arises is that now they're not speaking to each other. And so Chris is not involved in this production with Netflix, which he should be. In whatever it is that they have going on, they really should mend it if they want to be able to tell the story about Selena together. But I want to make this clear. The Quintanillas were there for Selena for 23 years of her life. Chris was there for about 5 years of her life at the end. They both deserve to tell their story. I'm not going to get into who deserves to tell it first or who deserves to tell it more, but I do believe that they both deserve to tell their story. And I'm looking forward to seeing Chris's version of the story on TV sometime soon. All right, that's it. That is what I have about these controversies. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Now, I know some of you disagree. I would love to talk to you in the comments, but let's be respectful because some of the comments out there are not really respectful. Body shaming anybody, whether it's Christian Serratos, whether it's Selena or Jennifer Lopez or anybody else around, is not a good look on anybody. Let's also not get so bogged down on the details by trying to compare it to the movie. These are two different productions and they're each going to have their own value and they're going to have their own mistakes as well. If we're talking about inclusivity, let's remember that Jennifer Lopez was a woman from the Bronx. There was a Puerto Rican ancestry playing a Mexican-American woman from South Texas. Nobody thought that it would work. It did, and it produced an amazing time. Everything wasn't perfect with the Selena movie. There are different times when Jennifer Lopez wore the wrong shoes. She held the microphone differently. Her wigs never really quite looked like Selena's hair. And Jennifer Lopez never really even tried to emulate Selena's speaking style. And let's not forget that Jennifer Lopez looked nothing like Selena, no matter what you think or remember from the movie. But that didn't matter because Jennifer Lopez was able to take the essence of who Selena was and bring it forward. And that's what made so many of us fall in love with Selena.